Stop me if you've heard this one before. The people of Boone County are what make the difference. It's what brought Boone County Chamber Executive Director Sean Reaves back to town, as you'll hear in this episode. Sean shares how he's seen the area change in his nearly 2 years on the chamber job and how nonprofit collaboration is providing a boon throughout the county. Episode 204 of the Love in Lebanon podcast starts now.
Welcome to the Love in Lebanon podcast, highlighting all the great things happening in Lebanon, Indiana. Have an idea for an episode? Send an email to loveinlebanon@lebanon.in.gov.
Hey everybody, and welcome to episode number 204 of the Love in Lebanon podcast. Joe LePage, the City of Lebanon Communications Community Development Director here. Last week, we talked with Eric Richards from the Boys and Girls Club of Boone County. This time around, we're keeping it in the county. We're talking with Boone County Chamber Executive Director Sean Reaves here on our podcast. Sean, first timer, thanks for being here on the pod.
Thank you for having me. And I want to say congratulations on that amazing radio voice you have. That is top notch.
Well, there's the pre-hitting record, and then there's the post, where it's the normal voice, then you hit the red button, and then you go.
I took high school radio and television at North Central, so we were connected with the Javert Light Career Center.
Oh, okay.
And I had my WJL. So I respect a good radio voice when I hear it.
You gotta find that punch with it. But you got great pipes too. I'm
a little nasally today, but I could do radio voice the whole time. But it might sound a little ingenuous. You come by it naturally. I'm putting it on, so you've got a good one.
Game appreciating game, everybody, here on episode 204. We've got Sean here, and truth be told, everybody, as we're recording this podcast, Sean and we saw each other earlier this morning at a marketers meetup, and it took place this time around at the Boone EDC out on Indianapolis Avenue. And Sean, if you kind of talk about that, this is an event that has had to find a larger venue because of the importance and because of the sheer number of people taking advantage of that. Can you kind of talk about what this whole marketers meetup event happens once a month?
Yeah, once a month. We partner with Ash Interactive. Their CEO and founder is a gentleman named Pete Brown. He's just an amazing person. And, truth be told, you and I were talking about Pete before, and he just does a really nice job with that. He meets people where they're at. And what I love about the Marketers Meetup is that it's something he's doing around the city. He does it in Hamilton County, in Hendricks County for us, and then he also does it at 16 Tech. And what I find really interesting about it is you could be a career marketer and still gain some knowledge, but he's really trying to hit for the folks. We have all sizes of businesses in the chamber, from small to medium to large to nonprofits. And sometimes the folks that you're putting in charge of your marketing are not career marketers. And so giving them the opportunity to gain some knowledge and some quick wins just really feels great. And so what I really like is someone like yourself who is, now a career marketer, or Krista Stillwell from Stillwell and Company. They come, and Pete has no problem pivoting to them and saying, what do you see? What are you seeing in your space? And I think that's really, really awesome. And I think that it gives a platform for someone to talk about what they do best and to spread that knowledge. And so we started we used to hold them at our chamber office.
It was a much smaller table, fewer chairs.
Yeah, and we were getting too big for that. And so then we bounced to the YMCA, and we were getting too big for that. So now we went to the EDC, our friends at the Boone Economic Development Corporation, and we were basically too big for that today. Yeah. So we're going to be looking for bigger places. Four Finger has told us we're happy to, and to host us in the mornings. They're not open for business at that time, so we may move it over there. But yeah, it's just interesting to see the growth of that program. And it really falls into a larger strategy for the chamber, which is we want to meet people and our businesses at different levels. And so when I first got to the chamber, it was pretty cut and dry on, hey, we do a women in business program, we do off the clock, and that's really where we live, ribbon cuttings, those sorts of things. And they were doing other programming as well, but it was a couple core big programs. And I said, we strategically want to offer more to our businesses to where they can send different people from a large organization to learn different skills. And so we have our executive exchange, which is for CEOs, for founders. Small businesses probably aren't a great fit for that, but there might be some that offer a unique perspective to that group. So there are some in there. So that group meets once a month. It's a cohort, closed group. And it's amazing because they're having high-end conversations about things they're dealing with at a at their level and how they can ping pong back and forth and have conversations. And you might have one company who's dealing with, unfortunately, maybe a downsizing. And we have an HR professional there who can say, here's the best practices. So it gives them a chance, even though they probably have a person that does that within their organization, to get an outside perspective or get something from that person that they've already benefiting from their experience. Conversely, we have emerging leaders, which is for folks that are at the beginning of their leadership journey.
Gotcha.
And so with that, I think it's unique because it offers those different points of entry for a chamber member. Marketers Meetup is the same thing. So we tried to really expand our programming, and we always say we're not worried about numbers. If we get 5 people, if we get 25 like we have this morning, that's okay, because the program is going to be strong no matter what. And so I think that's been really exciting for us to kind of live in that space.
Mm-hmm. And how often do you kind of have to break the maybe the mindset or help educate where chambers in the past, that the connotation has been, oh, you guys cut ribbons, and kind of do that, get the pictures, and everybody, the graphic, you'll see the pictures that I have of Sean for this podcast episode. There are several where we're cutting the ribbon at Savvy Sliders or over at a housing edition, that type of thing. But so much more now goes into what the Boone Chamber does, and that's been philosophically, that's kind of been something that you've helped lead the charge on here in Boone County. Nearly 2 years on the job. What do people's eyes do when you kind of mention these programs that aren't just ribbon cuttings, that are so much more to help them develop as business professionals?
First off, the Boone County Chamber has been a strong chamber for years. Diane Schultz, who was not the executive director before me, but the one before, she was here for 5 years, and she built a really strong base. And I always say Diane did a great job and want to give her kudos, because she really did a nice job of fortifying the chamber and growing it. And so when I stepped into the role, there were a lot of great things going on, but you're right. From an outside perspective, I think sometimes people look at chambers and it's, they do ribbon cuttings and they're shaking hands, kissing babies,
hooray, and move on.
And there is that component of it. There's no doubt. And I actually love doing ribbon cuttings because I love being there when a business is opening. I think it's the most exciting time for that business. So I think that's great. But we do so much more. And I actually struggled with that when I first came to the chamber. I had friends who said, now, I know, everybody's heard of a chamber of commerce, but they were like, I've never been a member. And I have some friends that own businesses, and they're like, I've never been a member, or what's that entail? And I was really bad at
your elevator.
Yeah, my elevator pitch was horrible. Bad at storytelling the chamber for the first 2 months. And with that, I had to kind of go out and talk to our members. And I literally went into members. Now I'll name drop GXO. I went into GXO, which at the time was one of our largest members. They are a partner member, which is the highest level of membership. And I remember sitting in their offices and I just said, why did you join the chamber? And I thought what was really interesting, they said, was it's about connectivity to Boone County. We want to be a part of what's going on here. And I thought that was so interesting, right? That they're using the chamber for that piece. And so I kind of would ask people, what programs do you like? And kind of doing that listening tour. And it kept coming back in Boone County to the connectivity piece. And so what we've learned is, in general, at every one of our programs, we're going to offer a moment of connectivity, whether it be, 15 minutes for networking, or whether it be, hey, the whole program is about the networking. But people are looking to get connected. And sometimes that is, hey, I want to grow my business, and what's the best way for me to grow it is to be in a group of people, like professionals. Yeah. But more than that, I think sometimes they're looking for, it goes back to the executive exchange, someone who's experienced, I can gain knowledge from. And so that's been the really, really exciting piece for me, is like, when I think about our programming, I always go back to, where's the connectivity piece? We have a founders forum, which is more for those small businesses and nonprofit execs. And the first session was about cybersecurity, which was extremely terrifying for me to listen to, because
I think it's terrifying for everybody.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean,
it's a scary time. Great session. I thought it was awesome. But I do know that there's tons of cybersecurity programs and ways to get that information, webinars, whatnot. What makes ours different is the people in the room that you can connect with. And so that's where I think that's what makes a chamber special. And I'll say there's chambers at different levels. So you have your U.S. chamber. They're all about advocacy. And even state level chambers and even the indie chamber, which they're doing a lot of different things, and it's great, but they've got so many businesses that are involved. They probably struggle from the connectivity piece. And that's the feedback we get from our members, is they can pick up the phone, I'm going to answer. And if they say, hey, can you introduce me to so-and-so? I'm trying to get hold of this person, or I will always do it. And I try to live in that connectivity piece. So I think that's I probably use the word too much, but I really think that's the secret sauce of a really good chamber, is if you're offering that connectivity. The programs are going to be offered. I'm on every chamber mailing list around. And it's great because I'll see something that another chamber is doing, and I have no problem stealing their idea. Saying, wow, you guys are doing
benchmarking.
That?
You call it benchmarking.
Yeah. I'll just say it's theft, But no, but sometimes, if they're doing something really, really great, and I'll give an example in a second here of one that we're doing that has been a great success, and it wasn't my idea. I think it came from Westfield's chamber. But with that, I feel like it's once again, finding the way to get person A to person B and letting them, because they're going to talk about the chamber when they do that. So hey, the chamber is who connected us. So that's what I would go back to. But the program I was
stealing,
yeah, borrowing, stealing, whatever you want to call it.
Repurposing,
top tier cocktail hour. So we have levels of membership. We have people that are standard members. We love our standard members. But we also have folks that are paying an expedited price to be listed on the website. And everybody's listed on the website that's a member, but they get a special placement. They get tickets to events and those sorts of things. And so we added a special event for those folks called Top Tier Cocktail Hour. So it is targeted networking with that group. And we have found, we had our first one down at Hickory Cottages. We're having another one this summer at Farmers Bank Fieldhouse. And it's for that group. And I do think it was from Westfield. If I'm giving credit to the wrong chamber, I apologize. But I was actually meeting with State Bank one day, and Angela Upchurch, who said, she goes, hey, I've got to go. I've got to get to the top tier. Whoa, tell me about this top tier cocktail hour. And she was like, yeah, it's for this. I was like, what a wonderful idea. So those are the things that you can learn, but it comes back to what's the goal of that program? Connecting you to other chamber members.
Gotcha. Sean Reaves, the Executive Director of the Boone County Chamber of Commerce, is our guest here on episode 204 of the Love and Lebanon podcast. And if we can kind of pull on the thread of that connectivity and that collaborative kind of flow that's been going, and really that you've helped take the foundation that was laid and being able to take it in a new and exciting direction as our county continues to grow. How have you seen that the kind of synergy happen within other nonprofit organizations? We mentioned that this morning, as we're recording everybody, this morning's meeting was at the EDC, which is not your office. There have been other meetings that have also been at other nonprofits. How has that kind of vision been unified or accepted by a lot of different nonprofits to be able to see, this connectivity thing, there's something to that, and I think it'll benefit everybody if we work together.
Yeah, I think I try to lead from a point of we're always going to lead from partnership. We are always going to try to build others up. And it's really easy to fall into, well, if I connect this person, is it going to hurt me? Are they going to give money to that organization, and that's going to be taken away from me? And I don't like that.
Yeah, I only thrive if others die, that type of thing. Yeah, gotcha.
And I think it's like the worst part of our personality sometimes, is that piece. And so I try to really hold myself to a standard of we're going to partner, we're going to lead, and I also try to lead from a moment of trust and saying I'm going to trust that the organizations we partner with are leading in good faith as well. And until you show me you're not, I'm going to trust you that you're leading from that way. And it's hard because human nature, I think, sometimes makes us revert back to, is this person trying to do something? It's a cybersecurity. We're all nervous about everything, right? Yeah. And maybe that's come with age. I'm 52 next month.
You mean wisdom?
Yeah, maybe wisdom. I don't know. I feel like the wisdom came a lot later for me than it probably should have. But yeah, you gain that with the wisdom in the age of saying, hey, I'm not going to worry about that. And I think I'm not healthier physically, but mentally having that mindset. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that I try to do. So I have a history in nonprofit. I actually worked in the profit world for, probably 15 years when I was out of college, and I was in corporate recruiting. I was the head of recruiting for a large retailer for 10 years, and I went to a competitor for 3 years, and I was totally burned out on it. And I was like, I just cannot look at another resume. And I actually talked to a mentor who was my boss, and I said, I think I'm going to look for another job. I want to make sure you're aware I'm not leaving tomorrow, but probably in the next 6 months I'm going to be thinking about it. And he said, what's your dream job? And I said, well, I don't know if I had a dream job. And we'd worked together at this previous company at the time. And he said, no, but what's the best job you ever had? Was it this job or that job? And I said, my favorite job, I was a camp counselor at the Y YMCA Camp Tecumseh.
No way.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I grew up, and that's
Yeah, so-
Brookston, Indiana. Absolutely,
Brookston,
out in
Indiana.
Delphi. Mhm.
And I was 1 year, and I was a poor kid. I mean, I did not come from wealth, and so I never went to camp. I mean, so to go work at that camp, which is to me the gold standard of camps to this day.
Camp T is amazing.
Yeah, I've sent
Yep.
both my daughters there. Can't say enough about it. But I love that job, and I love the impact that I felt I had. And I said, but I don't think my wife and kids want to live in a cabin at this point. And he goes, yeah, but there's YMCAs everywhere. Went home that night, and I actually applied for a job at what was now would be the Ortho Indy Y. It was the Pike Y then. And they called me back the next day and said, hey, we should have taken this posting down. We already hired someone, but we're struggling to find someone for the new Y that's going in Lebanon. And I said, oh, really? And so and to me, and at the time, and I was like, I felt like that was so far away, which is like the biggest
We've heard that
misnomer
before.
in the
We've
world,
heard that
right?
before. Yeah, Lebanon's so far away.
Yeah,
I've heard
I
that.
think it's like they treat it like it's the country and not the city. But I ended up going for an interview, and it was one of those interviews where you walked out and said, I'm going to get this offer. And it's a nonprofit. And at the time, it was a major pay cut. And I went home, and my wife said, you can't do that. And I said, if I don't do this, it's just the move I need to make. And so she said, you have 2 years. You can make this, but if it doesn't work out and you don't get promoted to where at least where we were in the same boat we were in, you've got to go find something else. And I said, deal, and it was the best decision I ever made. And I worked for the Y for 10 years, but the first 2.5 were here in Lebanon at the Witham Y. Then I got promoted to the Fishers Y, and then I actually got promoted down to the Ursay YMCA downtown for the last 5 years. And when I left there, it was right after COVID. The Y, they're not to any fault of their own, but everything changed after COVID.
Life in general.
Yeah. And so I looked for something different, and it was the first time I took a job based purely on a financial means, like, oh, this is going to pay more. And I knew right away, made a mistake. And so when I was looking again, I said, I would love to get back into Boone County because the people are amazing here. So that's a long-winded answer to say the Y taught me a lot about partnership because as a nonprofit, you have to have great partners. And so I think the folks we have in Boone County in the nonprofit space, from the Community Foundation to the Heart of Lebanon to the EDC to our partners at the Zionsville Chamber, I think most of those leaders are really leading from that partnership aspect. So it makes it really easy to call Jennifer Rubenstein at the EDC and be like, hey, we outgrew our spot. Can you please give us your conference room for the day? And she's like, yes, absolutely. So that's where we try to lead from. And I think that it makes everybody better. And I'm a big believer in that better together. So Julie Regan and I sat down 2 years ago or a year and a half ago and said, we need to launch a leadership program. That's where our Emerging Leaders program came out of. And so we did that for a year. And then she came back and said, hey, we want to launch Boone County Leaders again. So I said, well, gosh, we're already doing a leadership program. And we said, well, how can we make these different and market them together? So we came together and said, we have this program, Emerging Leaders, which is for folks who are in the beginning of their leadership journey, but they're relaunching BCL, which has been in the
Phenomenal program.
Yeah.
But
and getting it back out there. I think it's great. And so instead of competing, we said, we're going to market these together, and we put them under the umbrella of Leadership 06 and saying, hey, this is Boone County, this is who we are. And now we have a platform set up to where if we want to bring the Disney Institute back, if we want to do anything like that, we already have a platform set up to do that. And that comes out of partnership and not being worried about if she launches a program that's too close to my program, it's going to hurt me. No, let's work together on, and say, let's make these programs different enough. Her program is going to be 80% about Boone County and about how to be a great leader in Boone County. Ours is 80% skill development for people who are starting their leadership journey, no matter what age you are. But because people start that journey at different times, and so I think that's where we try to go from.
And the timing's been fantastic because a lot of, as you mentioned, just the leaders of those various nonprofits have been either new or they are certainly welcoming to other points of view and being able to kind of take that collaborative kind of effort and run with it. The timing has just been perfect for you wanting to come back to Boone County, and that just other desires and the reasoning to come back to the county?
I think it's all about the people. I really do. It was such an impact on me. And it's so funny to go to events and see people that I hadn't seen in 10 years, some of them. it was just really neat for me. And sometimes like seeing someone's face and saying, I know that person. How do I know them? Oh yeah, they came into the Y or this or that. And there's something in my 10-year Y career, twice I got to open new buildings. So I opened this Y, and then I also opened Ursay. And there's something really special about opening a Y. And because you get to see people starting their fitness journey and starting their relationship with the Y. And I think the world of the organization, I serve on one of the boards. And so with that, I think there's something to be said for, once again, that you learn those little things, those milestones in your career, and people make the difference. The people you're working with, the people you surround yourself with, and I really feel like Boone County as a whole, but Lebanon specifically, has some of the greatest people in the world. I think it ties back to ag. I really do. Yeah. I think that people here, their parents worked hard, their parents worked hard, and that passes down. They bring that work ethic to everything they do, and the honesty too. Of your yes means yes, and it doesn't need to be written. I said it, so that's enough because I stand by my word. That type of thing. Yeah, and not blind trust, because I think there's sometimes, hey, what are you trying to get to? And I think that's okay. I told someone, I feel sometimes like Lebanon and Boone County can be a little bit like Missouri's a show me state, right? Like, don't tell me about it. Show me through your actions what you're doing. But once you've shown that, then that trust comes. And I think that's really important. So it's about people. I truly believe that. And I think that in my personal life too. Surround yourself with good people that are going to do right by you, and you will prosper, and you will take joy in watching them prosper as well. Man, well said. Well said. Episode 204 of our Love and Lebanon podcast features Boone County Chamber of Commerce Executive Director Sean Reaves here on the Love and Lebanon podcast. Now, we talked earlier about your 30-second elevator speech. Which I'm really horrible about, because when you asked me earlier, I talked for like 6 minutes. So I am the worst at an elevator speech. We went from the basement all the way to the penthouse and then back down to the lobby. But being able to mention some of these things and highlight the marketers meetup and being able to go to a lot of these off-the-clock events and the women in small business, and being able to go to the top-tier event. You had me at cocktail, but then you go to the top-tier action as well. All those membership benefits, and I'm sure there are countless others. If someone's listening to this podcast thinking, I don't have a ribbon to cut per se, but I want to get involved here, how much do you recommend it to be able to dip a toe in and be able to see what the chamber has to offer? Yeah, you can come to any program. If you reach out to us, we are trying to move towards as many member programs as possible that don't have a cost, as long as we don't incur a cost for them. So a great example of that was this morning Marketers Meetup. We don't charge for that. You can come to that for free. It's a member program, but we had a couple people there this morning that are checking out the chamber. They just want to see what it's about. And I'll always say, come try us, see if we're your cup of tea. And if we're not, that's okay as well. If we have a charge for a program, it's typically because we're offering a full meal. Today we had donuts and coffee, so we were able to eat the cost of that. Pun intended, yeah. Yeah. But if we're offering, our Women in Business, sponsored by Aspire, that program specifically is a breakfast program with a program and networking. So we have a fee for that because we have to pay the caterer. And so if you see a charge on something, it's basically because we're incurring a fee. Our Emerging Leaders program, there's a $400 charge for it, but it's a cohort that runs throughout the whole year. There's an assessment you take where you'll have a lunch at each program. And so that's why there's a program. But we want to offer as much free programming as we can. So Off the Clocks are free. Members or Marketers Meetup is free. Our Culinary Collective is going to be free this year, which is a restaurant and food services operators group. So we're doing as much as we can to offer on the free side. Gotcha. And another membership does have its privileges, and something that's relatively new. There are 3 episodes in or so, everybody. But Business Boone, kind of double meaning there, is a podcast. You're listening to this, chances are, either on the city's YouTube channel or your Spotify or iTunes, whatever, which is a familiar place where you can find Business Boone, the podcast that is now being launched by the Boone County Chamber. And if you kind of talk about that's another resource to help business professionals just kind of meet each other, but also be able to get some helpful tips too along the way. Yeah, so the idea behind Business Boone, we were running a program called Lead, and it was around that. And I always felt like from the very beginning, it was one I inherited, and it's a good program. And I would sometimes walk away and say, wow, that was a great program, but it was a lunchtime program. And I think lunchtime programs are tough sometimes. We have the best of intentions, and then life happens and you're like, I'm not going to make it to that. And I said, and I remember after one in particular where the attendance was a little low and it was such a good program, I was like, I wish people could would be able to get this information. And it kind of hit me, well, what if we recorded it? And then I'm like, every time I'm a big podcast fan, and when they're live ones, I don't like them as much. I don't need the audience interaction. I want to listen to the speakers. And so with that being said, then I said, well, what if we did a podcast? And so I went to Deep in Talent Strategies. Shauna Lake was one of the sponsors of LEAD, and said, is this something you'd be interested in? And sure enough, she was like, we've been thinking about launching our own podcast. And I said, that's actually perfect, because while I could put on my WJEL radio voice.
Yeah, you could go big voice.
89.3. It's not really something that I was like, no one wants to hear me talk for a half hour. So when you get the statistics back on this one and people turned it off after, you'll know why.
No, you went big voice early on. They're gonna stick around. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, you hooked them.
But Shauna was like, we would love to do that with you. So we went from there. And then the other sponsor of that program was Boone REMC. And so they were able to say, hey, we'll jump in as a sponsor of your first 16 episodes to give you some support. So it's a video podcast and audio, so you can have it any way,
any way you like it.
Your preferred method of taking in a podcast. And so what we try to do is highlight our members, and we try to make it to a larger scale audience. So we talk about Boone County, and it's business Boone, but we put the E in parentheses, so there's a word play there. Like,
it's a helper. It's a boon. Yes.
Yeah. And so, but the idea being that if I found this by accident and I live in Missouri again, I could still gain knowledge from it. And so we've had people on to talk about storytelling. We've had people on talking about mental health in the workplace, about scaling your business. And so it's been interesting. And it's really interesting, and you probably see this when you host, is like Chris Cannell was a guest. And when you're with Chris in public, he's the most engaging person in the world. He's got such a wonderful personality, and he's one of my favorite people that I get to interact with. But on the podcast, he got a little stiff, and he was like trying to make sure he said everything the right way. And so that's also fun. But yeah, I mean, I think the knowledge, he was the guest on the scaling. And when you're talking about Ideal Food Group, and Chris is a great example of scaling, right? We've got Ideal Food Group. He's a food distribution company CEO. He also, owns multiple restaurants. They're part owners of Moody Butcher Shops.
Yep.
And now he's
got the leprechauns.
He just bought the Lebanon leprechauns.
He needed another thing. And to be honest, everybody, he's the reason why Sean and I are sitting here. After I recorded with Chris, he was like, have you had Sean on yet? I was like, no, boom, he connected us via text, and there we are today.
Yeah, and Chris is a great example of that, like he has so much knowledge to give. And I love, what I love about Chris, and this goes back to connectivity, and I think we have a lot of leaders like this. It's not just Chris. He is more than happy to meet someone, and he will know going into that meeting, it's not someone that he's probably going to be able to do business with, but he's willing to help anybody. And I think that goes back to someone, and Chris is from Logansport, but I tease him because he's like, well, I'm a Lebanon guy. I'm like, I don't know if you can be called a Lebanon guy yet, because I don't know if you've lived here long enough, but he's a Lebanon resident, but he's got that kind of feel to him of he's that type of guy. And I love it when people lead like that. And Chris is a great example of that. I've set him up with multiple folks that want to get into the food industry, or they have a small product, and he'll know, hey, you're probably not to the level where we would do distribution with you at this point, but he's more than willing to help. And I think that comes back to when you talk about chamber, it's that connectivity, it's helping out your fellow business, because I have so much respect for the guts it takes to start your own business. I mean, that entrepreneurship piece, that's a challenge. I've worked for startups, and it is really tough. It's
a true leap of faith and a challenge, like taking a pay cut to do something you love, like you did with the Y, and the rest of they say is history.
Absolutely.
So that's awesome. Sean, thanks for being here on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And I hope this isn't the only time that we get you on here. This is the first of what we're hoping will be many times you're with us.
Excellent. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all you're doing for our community and for the city.
I appreciate it. And everybody, just so you know, all the information, the things that we're talking about, the Boone County Chamber is a great follow on Facebook, all the socials. You can go there. I'll put links to all that info so you can kind of check it out. Also, the Business Boone podcast, I'll put something on the graphic and the body of the podcast as well, so you can stay connected with Sean and the rest of the Chamber team and consider being part of what they do throughout our community. So we appreciate you listening to episode 204 of this Love and Lebanon podcast episode. More episodes coming your way soon. Take care.